Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is have. And have is a very important verb. It's used a great deal in English. So I'm actually going to do have as our verb of the day 2 times this week. This is just part 1 of our video. And we're going to start by looking at some very broad or general definitions of this verb. If you look up the verb have in the dictionary, you are going to see so many different definitions or meanings and usages for this particular verb. And I don't want our videos to turn into 30-minute lectures. I don't think I would hold anyone's attention for that long. So I'm just going to focus on a few very common usages for this verb. So the first way you might hear the verb have used is to mean to possess, own, hold, or be made up of. So if you think of possess, own, or hold, here you might think of relationships. So someone saying a sentence like, I have one brother. You might inquire if your friend has a pencil, right? Are you holding this on your person right now? A second way to use the verb have is to mean to experience. So might ask someone who's attending a party or an event that you're hosting, are you having a good time? A third way to use the verb have is to mean to suffer from an illness. So as an example of that, you might hear someone say, I have a backache. Right? I have pain coming from my back. A fourth way to use the verb have is to mean to be required or find it necessary to do a specified thing. So for this definition, I want you to think of children and parents remind them, you have these chores, these things to do. Their friends ask them, can you go out and play? No, I have to clean my room. And so have to, this is the be required sort of meaning. What you're going to notice with this particular definition or usage is after have or has or whatever verb tense you might be using here, you're going to see the infinitive right after it as well. You should know that have is an irregular verb. To make the progressive tense, I'm going to drop the E and add ing to form having. The past tense and participle forms of this verb have just a different spelling. It's H-A-D, and it's pronounced had. Now, let's take a look at some phrasal verbs with have. But before we do that, I want to note this is not every single phrasal verb with have. I'm going to have some more tomorrow for us. But I've also removed a few that just didn't seem all that useful, but you may still encounter them as you listen to other people speak or as you read. So just know this is not an exhaustive list. And the first phrasal verb we're going to look at is to have against. And this means to dislike, disagree, or hold a grudge. An example of this usage might be, what do they have against our plan? So here someone is asking, what do they dislike about the plan? What do they disagree with regarding the plan? The hold a grudge meaning is more common to be used with a person or a group of people. So this is just kind of like a long-standing dislike. Something happened in the past and it has affected someone's relationship. They haven't forgotten about that bad experience. And the next phrasal verb we'll look at is have at. This can have several different meanings, but the one we're going to focus on here is to do something with energy and enthusiasm. Here's an example sentence. Lunch is ready. Have at it. So someone is saying, fill your plate, start eating. And probably the person who has cooked and prepared all this food wants you to enjoy it. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is to have someone back. And this just means you're inviting someone for a return visit. So they've been at your house once or maybe many times, and now you're inviting them back for an additional visit. Here's an example. You can have your friends back next week. So again, this might be something a parent is sharing with their child. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to have someone down. This I feel like is maybe more common in the Midwest and South, but essentially you're inviting someone who lives north of you to your own house, to your home. So an example of that, we'll have them down for a week this summer. Now, maybe to make this a little more concrete, I live in Iowa, and if I had a friend in Minnesota, right, I could invite that person down, have them down for a visit. Since they live north, that's why we're using the preposition down. The next phrasal verb we'll take a look at has a couple meanings. Have for could mean to have something that is useful for a particular task. Here's an example of that. Do we have the right tool for the job? But have for could also be referring to eat or to prepare something for a particular meal. Here is another example of that. What are you having for dinner? So now we're going to shift and look at using the verb have in the past perfect and the present perfect. And the reason I chose these two verb tenses is that I have received so many questions about this as I've taught. To many students, it doesn't seem right to be using a verb sort of twice, as you'll see in an example here, or using a form of the verb in sequence. So I'll show you what I mean by that. In our perfect form, so this is past perfect, present perfect, future perfect as well, we are using have, we're using a form of have, I should say. We're using a form of have and pairing that with a participle for these particular verb tenses. So in the past perfect, we're going to use a past form of had, and then we're going to use the participle. And the participle is the same. So I want us to look at the affirmative sentence I have here as an example. The pilot told the air traffic control that the plane had had an engine failure. So to many students, had just doesn't seem like that could be right, but it is. It's okay. And that's what this is a signal of, the past perfect. So we're describing an action that occurred before a certain point in time or before another action. Now, if I want to make a negative past perfect sentence, I'm going to insert not after had, the first had. And it might be easier to use the contraction form, so that sounds like we're a little different in how we're speaking. But the team hadn't had a winning season in 10 years. And if I want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, I'm going to start with had, then I'll have my subject, and then the participle again. So again, you're going to have two hads in one sentence. Had he had that dish before? Right? So this is a kind of a reference to eating, dining, etc. Now let's take a look at the present perfect. In the present perfect, I am describing an action that started in the past and continues into the present, or I'm describing an action that occurred at some unknown time in the past. And it might not just matter if it happened one day ago, 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year in the past. To form this verb tense, I'm using a present form of have. So that's have if our subjects are I, you, we, or they. Or it's has, H-A-S, if our subjects are he, she, or it. And then we'll use the participle form. So here is an example sentence. Some people have had COVID-19 twice. And if I want to make a negative present perfect sentence, I'm just going to insert not after the have or has. Here's another example. Some people in Texas haven't had power or water for a week. And if I want to make a yes or no question in the present perfect, I'm going to start with have or has, whichever word matches my subject, which comes next, and then we'll have the participle. Has she had a COVID-19 vaccination? Now, let's take a look at some related words and phrases with our verb have. The first one we're going to look at has the exact same pronunciation, exact same spelling. It's just the noun form of this word. So if you hear have used as a noun, it's generally referring to someone that has material wealth. So another way to say someone who is rich. Here's an example of how you might hear this noun used in a sentence. The pandemic has increased the gaps between the haves and have-nots. So again, just another way to say it's created gaps between the rich and the poor. Another phrase that you might hear with have is to have someone's back. And I'm going to point out, this is a little different than the phrasal verb we looked at before. So that was have someone back. This is possessive. So you might hear a person's name. We might see a possessive adjective used here. So, and you'll see that in my example sentence in just a second. But if you have someone's back, you are willing and prepared to help them or maybe even defend them. Here's an example. We'll always have your back. So we are always prepared and willing to help. Another phrase you might hear is to have had it. This can have a couple different meanings based on how it's used. The first way you might hear it used is you're describing an object or a thing that is in poor condition. And maybe it's so poor you can't even fix it. You can't repair it. Okay? An example of that might be someone saying, our vacuum has had it. We're going to have to buy a new one. Another way you might hear have had it is usually it's a person who's speaking about their feelings and their emotions, and they are expressing that they are so annoyed that they no longer want to maybe engage with, talk with another person, or continue with a particular activity or action. So an example of this could be, I've had it with my job. I'm quitting tomorrow. So I am so annoyed. I no longer want to work here. And maybe it's more than a little annoyment. It's anger. It's frustration, and it's built up usually over a long period of time. Another phrase you might hear is to have it. This is often used to express that a speaker is sharing something that they're not completely sure is 100% true or accurate. So let me give you an example sentence of how this can be used. Rumor has it that he got a promotion last week. So if somebody said this sentence to me, I would know this person has maybe heard gossip from other people, but they don't know for certain that the other individual received a promotion. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.